Oh man, what a glorious Monday. The glorious Monday here in the United States in Austin, Texas. But Canada did an oopsie. I logged into Twitter this morning and man, Canada just doesn't seem to get it right. I don't even know if they're trying to get it wrong, but they seem to be striking out a lot. As you can see, I'm gonna from the title, Canada honors World War II vet for fighting Russians. Fought for Germany. I wanted to go with a different title, but I do post to YouTube, so we'll leave it at that for right now. But Canada House, according to Ground.news, Canada House Speaker apologized for recognition of a veteran who fought for the 1920 Germans, let's put it that way. Speaker of the House of Commons has apologized for praising a Ukrainian man who served in a German unit during World War II. I mean, if we all knew our history, we would know that when Germany conquered, liberated Ukraine from Russia, a lot of them joined their military, and they were very ruthless and very cruel, to the point where even the Germans had to tell them to cut it out. Yaroslav Hunka, a 98-year-old veteran, received a standing ovation in Parliament after being called a hero by the Speaker during a visit by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. However, a Canadian Jewish group expressed concerns over celebrating someone who's been part of a I'm just going to say it, a Nazi division that committed genocide against Jews. It wasn't just Jews. It was against a lot of people. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was presented in Parliament at the time. Opposition of Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre placed responsibility on Trudeau and called for an apology. Trudeau's office responded by stating that the decision to invite Hunka was made by the Speaker's office and an apology was appropriated. Kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal. I mean, I get Russia is technically our enemy because they're fighting against the Ukrainians. And how dare they try to invade Ukraine? Don't they know that's where our money laundering is? I mean, that's what a country that we want to join NATO at some point. According to NBC, news bias leans left. Standing ovation for Ukrainian who fought with the Nazis sparks angers and apology in Canada. War in Ukraine. Here, Mr. Hunka, 98, recognized by lawmakers shortly after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed Canadian Parliament. Now you go away. We don't care to see the video. September 25th, 2023, at 5:46 a.m. Central Time, updated September 25th, 2023. 9:02 a.m. Central Time by Alexander Smith by NBCNews.com. Seems like touching a timely tribute by Canadian lawmakers to a 98-year-old war hero who fought for the Ukrainians' independence during World War II, but soon emerged as the man was in fact part of the notorious Nazi unit, leading a flurry at the standing ovation. He was given in presence of the Ukrainian presidential Volodymyr Zelensky. Yaroslav Hunka wiped away tears on receiving the rousing recognition from the Canadian House of Commons on Friday. He was singled out by Speaker Anthony Rota, who called him a hero, following a speech by the visiting Ukrainian leader, who in turn raised the a fist during the applause. But Rhoda apologized Sunday after he was subsequently became aware of more information about Hunka's past. I think he knew. He knew exactly who he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly this person's past. I mean, they do background checks. You don't get that close to leaders without a simple background check. Let's see here. The Ukrainian non-agenda did fight the Soviet Union, but as part of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SSS, a Nazi military unit whose crimes against humanity during the Holocaust are well documented, according to friends of Simon Westphal Center, a Canadian human rights group promoting awareness about the Holocaust and fighting anti-Semitism. Not a good look for Canada. The center said in a statement Sunday that was deeply disturbed by Hunka's recognition in Parliament and further outraged that he received a standing ovation. The fact that a veteran who served in a Nazi military unit was invited to give a standing ovation in Parliament is shocking. It says Hunka's unit, also known as the 1st Ukrainian Division, was responsible for mass murders of innocent civilians with a level of brutality and malice that is unimaginable. Another Canadian-based advocacy group, Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, said it's deeply troubled and disturbed. Michael Moisen, the CEO of a Jewish human rights organization, B'nai B'rith Canada, called the invitation ovation beyond outrageous. Rhoda, the common speaker, said that he alone was responsible for inviting Hunka, who lives in the area that he represents, implying that neither Zelensky nor the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau knew about it. Particularly want to extend my apology to the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, the speaker said in a statement. I accept full responsibility for my actions. Zelensky, who is Jewish, has said members of his families were killed during the Holocaust. NBC News contacted his office for comment. Trudeau office said in a statement that Rhoda has apologized and accepted full responsibility. This was the right thing to do, and the statement said no advance notice was provided to the Prime Minister's office nor the Ukrainian delegation about the invitation or recognition. Members of Parliament from all parties, not just Trudeau's Liberal Party, rose to applaud. Hunka, a spokesperson for the Conservative Party, said that the party was not aware of its history at that time, the Associated Press reported. Pretty sure a lot of people didn't know him, but I'm pretty sure a few people knew. I'm not going to say the Prime Minister or even Zelensky knew, but there's people there that knew. I think they were hoping that no one would catch it. Hunka could not be immediately reached for comment, the AP said. I mean, is this an AP article or is this NBC News? In 1985, Canadian government launched an inquiry into the numbers of former soldiers who fought under the Nazis during World War II and then taking up residence in Canada. The Deschanets Commission, as it was known, found 2 years later that claims that war crimes against the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division, also known as the 1st Galician, have never been substantiated. Sorry, I can't read today. It has never been substantiated, a contention that has been contested by scholars. Russia seizes on revolting recognition. Issues of a Nazi and far-right ideology, especially touchy one for Ukraine. One of the nebulous justifications given by Russian President Vladimir Putin for invading his former Soviet neighbor is that he wants to denazify Ukraine, which he says is being run by neo-Nazis, enabled by the West. There's little evidence For this claim, if you ignore all the evidence that's been brought forth already, some symbols that the Nazis use are on certain uniforms, especially in eastern Ukraine, where the fighting has been taken care of. If you ignore all that, then there's little evidence for this claim. But Russian officials were quick to seize on Ivanka ovation as proof that the far right leanings of Ukraine and his backers. Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov called the spectacle revolting and accused the Canadians of having such an uncareful attitude to memory during his daily briefing to journalists on Monday. A whole new generation has grown up in Canada unaware of fascism and Nazi crimes. And the USSR crimes, too. Let's add that there, too. He said, and we can see Nazism resurrect here and there, like, for example, in Ukraine. Russian ambassador to Canada, Oleg Stepanov, said that inviting the former Nazi into parliament was no accident, calling the Canadian government essentially personification of neoliberal fascism, according to Russia news agency RIA. You know, there's a little difference between communism and Nazism and fascism. They're all forms of socialism where the government has a complete control. It's a top-down economy or the economy. So even the communism Russia, which was the USSR under Stalin and the person before him and a couple people after him, definitely have some crimes against humanity of themselves. The Great Famine that happened in Ukraine under USSR rule, which was the direct result of the Russians coming in, taking over the farms, leaving very few food left over for the Ukrainians. And the Russia that there is now, there is some key differences. It's more democracy based, but it's not. But it's not completely innocent. Let's put it that way. Russians permanent representative Vina Mikhail, whatever your name is, called it a shameful day for Canada. The news agency reported, like many other countries, including Russia, Ukraine does have some far-right elements, notably Azov Battalion, which has been incorporated into the Ukrainian National Guard, has history of far-right and white supremacist insignia and beliefs. That's the group I was talking about up above. Support for the prominent World War II era nationalist figures like Stepan Bandera also persists, with many referring to him as a freedom fighter against the Soviets, despite the fact that he was also a Nazi collaborator. Just before World War II, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, and millions of Ukrainians fought for the Red Army against Nazi Germany. At this time, the country also had one of the largest Jewish communities in Europe, population long subjected for persecution and pogroms. Pogroms? However you pronounce that. When the country was invaded by German forces in 1941, many Ukrainian nationalists welcomed them as liberators from the Soviet yoke, according to Yad Wasson, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. Many Ukrainians and some of the prisoners of war will willingly join the German auxiliary units. One of these days I'll learn to read. This is collaboration as it extended to the Holocaust of bullets. The killing of an estimated 1.5 million Ukrainian Jews were shot to death near their homes rather than deported to camps by the Germans along the side of willing Ukrainians and Russians, according to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. So it seems like Germans, Ukrainians, and Russians were killing the Jewish people during World War II. Some have said or theorized, I don't know if I can back this up, that A lot of the Holocaust was done by the Russians as they were invading Germans. I can't back that up. It's just a theory I have. Not saying that leaves Germany off the hook, because they definitely have their war crimes, just like Ukraine has their war crimes, just as the Soviet Union has their war crimes, and so does the current Russia government has their war crimes, not counting the American war crimes as well. But this was like a big no-no. I mean, you don't invite Nazis to your government facility and give them a standing ovation. There should have been more checks and balances, unless they thought this person was a World War II vet. He probably fought for the Nazis, but no one's going to know. He's 98 years old. No one's recognized him now. They thought they could pull a fast one. It could be the Speaker of the Commons, or it could be more ingrained. I don't know. There's just more speculation on my behalf. But this is a big no-no, and they got caught with their pants down, rightfully so. And it's kind of hilarious and sad and disturbing all at the same time. But that being said, that is my video for today. With that being said, have yourself a wonderful day, morning, or evening.